Monster of the Month Club, it's your friendly neighborhood mad scientist, me, Laura E. Welcome to today's sneak peek of what's on the slab in my lab. If you've been following along, you know that this week I am working on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Well, Sabrina the Teenage Witches. So it's a double customization. It'll probably be a two-part video. So in part one, I will be working on taking her from prepped doll, which happened in the thrift haul video. If you watch that, you can see the prepping process, taking that to finished customized doll. So let's get started.
Where we left off at the thrift haul video was I had removed the factory paint off the dolls and removed their hands. I removed their faces off camera because it involves a sharp object, so I didn't want to film that in case I messed up. Here I am removing their hair plugs. I decided to remove their faces because for the design I'm using, the face is pretty flat and the face of the Monster High doll has a lot of depth, so if I remove the front of their face, it allows for a smoother end product. That took a long time. Once I got all their hair plugs removed, I used a jeweler saw and removed their feet because similar to my Kiki's delivery service doll, I wanted a thin leg, and to achieve that end result, I needed to remove the feet because again, there was a lot of depth. So I used my jeweler saw and I cut off their feet. And then I used the pattern I made in the thrift haul video and traced it out on some faux fur. The construction process is similar to that of making a onesie, so I had to trace out the front and back in its entirety and then sew the whole front piece to the whole back piece. So here I am pinning the legs and arms to the body. I did the same thing for the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina Salem cat with the black faux fur, but I didn't record it because I initially had some trouble finding my paint pen that I use to trace on the black fabric and nothing else shows up. So I did that off camera once I eventually got the appropriate pen type. I sewed all those up. I still need to find a good way to record my sewing on the machine, so I did that off camera, but I sewed up the bodies and the head. I ended up using the same head pattern from my Kiki's delivery service doll, and so I stuffed it with some polyfill and I put the doll in there to adjust the stuffing around the actual doll head to make sure it was firm enough and distributed to my liking. Then I stuffed the legs. I wanted to stuff it to basically fill in the gaps where the doll is not, because I'm using the doll basically as an armature. So I wanted there to still be range of motion, but I also wanted it to fill out with the stuffing. So that was kind of a delicate balance. Then I sewed up the back so as to close it up, and then I used a pin to get the fur out of the seams. So sometimes when you sew faux fur, the fur gets stuck up in the seams and you can see the seams more easily. So to remove that, it's kind of a tedious process, but you take a pin and sort of take the fur and move it so it gets out of the seam. And I repeated the same steps for my 90s Sabrina doll with the stuffing of the head, then the stuffing of the legs, and getting the faux fur out of the seams. Then I started to put the suit back on the doll and stuffed it to my desired firmness. And then I sewed up the back, and this time I had to fix her because her forearm kept on disconnecting from the top of her arm. So I had to fix that and re-sew it back up and make sure she was still posable. Once I had that done, I made an ear pattern and I traced it. There you can see me using my Sharpie paint pen on the black fabric, and it shows up reasonably well, not great. I still need to explore other options, but for now I know this works enough. So here I am pinning it. The fluff is getting everywhere as always. And then I sewed them using my machine, trimming the excess around the sewn edge. And then I flipped them, make sure they're the right size. Then I stuffed them to give them a little bit of extra oomph. Because the head is so fluffy and the ears are so tiny, I wanted to make sure they still stood out, so I stuffed them. Then I put them in the holes I left open in the head and hand sewed them into place. And I did the same thing with my 90s Sabrina doll. This one was a little tougher because the one ear ended up being super short for some reason. This particular faux fur is super slick, and so it shifted a lot when I was sewing it. I pinned it fairly well, but obviously not well enough. So I finished sewing that, got the ears into place. I illustrated the eyes digitally, printed them out in the appropriate size, and then I glued them on to the cabochons, which gives it that extra gleam eye sheen. And I cut out the felt ears, the nose, and the cheeks, and then sort of placed them where I wanted to. And I trimmed the mouth smaller because obviously I didn't want that big of a mouth, and I was trying to figure out the appropriate ratio. And I used some fabric glue and the pointy end of a kebab skewer to place the glue delicately on to the small pieces and then push them into place. Last time I used hot glue and it was mildly terrifying, so this time I decided I was going to try a more delicate approach for the nose and mouth. The eyes, because they are so much heavier, I still decided to use hot glue, but for these tiny pieces, because the hot glue tends to get everywhere and I'm not super great at utilizing it, I tried this approach and it worked pretty well. I had my hot glue gun off camera for some reason. You'll see the camera shaking because I didn't want to place the eyes while I was sitting down, so I had to stand up a bunch to make sure I was getting them exactly where I wanted them. So on the first eye, I used a little bit too much hot glue, so I had to utilize the kebab skewer to make sure it didn't run all over everywhere. And then I hot glued the cheeks in place. And once I had that guy done, I started again on the second cat. I was trying to be super careful to put the eye shine that I'd illustrated in the right place so she didn't end up looking cross-eyed. I think I managed that. Then I use the hot glue to glue the cheeks. Hot glue is really effective, but you have to be super quick about it. And then there's all these weird little strings, and that I don't like, but it's okay. It holds. And then I was trying to get some excess fuzz off of the black cat because both of these fabrics shed a lot. So I had to deal with that, and I still need to lint roll them, but I got most of it out of the way. So when I glued the felt inner ears into place, it worked out. Because the faux fur was so much longer on the tan cat, I trimmed the faux fur before I glued the inner ear into place. And I repeated the same thing on the other side. In the continuing saga of Sabrina cats, I will show their outfit construction because this was already a long video, so that will be for another video. You'll get to see me making their super cute outfits.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like dolls, monsters, or fun crafts, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow along on social media for all the creepy crawly fun. And until next time, stay spooky, friends!